Everyone hated Usman, didn't they? Marty Snoozman. He was dominant. He had a win streak unlike anyone else. People were arguing him over George St. Pierre as the best welterweight of all time. Leon comes along, head kicks him into orbit. However, though, Leon's not wanting to fight Colby. Obviously, it seems like he's sort of been forced into that fight, really. But when you do look at it, do you wonder whether or not we took Usman for granted?
He lost his first fight and then won 20 in a row, which is pretty ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
One of the greatest win streaks ever.
He fought some really good guys as well. Like, he's got a win over Sean Strickland.
Well, the thing is, like, when he was champ, he had his best fights when he was champion because he started knocking people out all of a sudden. He finished Colby. He finished Masvidal in the second fight. He finished Burns as well. Dana called him the greatest welterweight of all time. He was the best thing since GSP.
I think if you're going to ask people, like, did we take Usman for granted? For any hardcore fan watching or anyone who cares about the sport, they'll say no, because he is one of the most technically proficient fighters of all time. But that doesn't mean he was very likable. I don't think many people liked Usman, which is kind of why people were kind of happy to see him go. Usman kind of had a bit of an ego to him sometimes, had some backstage square downs. People sometimes didn't like his attitude. Sometimes people called him cringy. So there was not a lot.
He used to speak a lot like he was telling spooky stories.
Yeah, like there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of things that a lot of people liked about Usman.
Could you argue that nothing has really changed in the realm of like how marketable Leon actually is? Because prior to his head kick finish of Usman, again, everyone hated Leon, and perhaps that changed a little bit after he beat Nate Diaz, but really, as a champion, how excited are people for Leon?
Did people hate Leon though? Like,
I think they did.
It maybe wasn't my time.
He got called the most boring fighter in UFC history.
But I think he's done a really good job of disproving that.
The head kick.
I think the case as well is like people didn't know him yet, and you need that something great to happen.
People did dislike him. People did call him boring, but he also never showed any of his personality. But then when he gets the head kick knockout, you have him dancing with the pizza, you have him doing the boom headshot dead, you have him talking about his hard upbringing, and it's really like the struggle, the culmination of this hard journey that he's been through, which instantly made him more likable than he was.
He had to have that performance to get people invested. How has this guy been beaten solidly for 4 rounds and then come back with a Hail Mary KO? But the time between him and him fighting Colby has been quite long, where that kind of aura about him is kind of fading a little bit.
It says a lot when someone like Colby Covington, who said all the things he said and done all the things he's done, arguably is more liked than someone like Usman or Leon. Certainly has more people that hate and despise him, but probably also has more people that like him and think he's funny and are entertaining. And he is a supremely controversial character, so it just goes to show really how popular Usman was as a champion, and even Leon now, just because Leon's doesn't express himself that much sometimes.
A few years prior, people in London were booing Leon, and maybe that's just because of the position that he put himself in when he was beefing with Darren Till, and Darren Till was astronomically more popular than him at that time. Not even his own countrymen liked him.
I feel like it's not that people dislike him. He didn't give them a reason to like him because he didn't really express himself or like show much of his personality or show any kind of. Whereas Gunnar Nelson on the other side of things, he's doing flash dances on YouTube and obviously training with Conor McGregor, but he says a lot of interesting things, backstage, and if he's very calm. It
doesn't negate the fact that he was still being booed in an arena in his own country. But this is what I'm saying, like in regards to whether or not we took him for granted. In 2021, he fought 3 times.
Yeah,
no, that
is true. Yeah, and they were all big fights, and they all sold really well. And that was the year he turned everything around. And that is a really good moment to look at in someone's career, where you have a guy who's not particularly liked by the fan base, but is able to turn it all around in 1 year, because mainly he also just showed up and fought 3 times.
It might have been his adversaries doing it, but his fights always felt quite personal, didn't they? Like, they always felt like a big feud between him and his opponents. And even when it comes to Gilbert, he knows what I'm going to do, I know what he's going to do, and it's like, it always made us really invested in his fights, I find. Whereas Leon, maybe we haven't had that yet. It was like Nate Diaz was kind of given to him as like, you need to beat this guy to make yourself a star, and then did, but in not the way that the company would want or he would want. He's done that with Usman now, but maybe he just needs that extra time to get through the Colbys.
He is now at the stage where Usman has done everything. He's defended the belt multiple times. He's had this incredible win streak. He is coming off of 2 losses now to Leon. But he is calling out people like Hamza and have those kind of amazing fan favorite sort of battles. He doesn't need to do that. But the fact that he's still looking for big fights and what's next in his career It's pretty admirable. He's now kind of maybe in the legacy period of his career. Dustin Poirier, for instance, he's on his Dustin Poirier run.
Before the Leon losses, you could say Usman's up there with the likes of Khabib. I mean, it seems like people hold Khabib way higher than Usman does, even though their records are pretty similar.
It's just because Khabib didn't lose.
Is it because
More
Khabib's
dominant.
story as well? Wrestles bears, comes from the mountains. He's the first
Okay,
Russian
so
athlete
I
in
mean,
the UFC.
I'd say he's probably more likable
Dagestan, I think,
than
or
Usman.
Here's a counter to, obviously, did we take Usman for granted as well? When Jorge Masvidal kept getting a title shot for no reason, other than the fact that he had a really good year, people felt like Usman was ducking the division at that time. Do you remember? It felt very roadblock during that point. People were still like, oh, he's not fighting the people he should be fighting. It's difficult now, right? Because we are in a situation where the fact that he won that belt and now he said, no, Colby hasn't earned it. I don't want to fight him. And he's become champion. He's just kind of saying no to things. It kind of feels like Dana has forced Leon into this fight with Colby because he's only ever been saying, no, I don't want to do that.
The UFC make the fights, and if you are the champion, you are the apex of the division. You are what everyone's going for.
Supposed to beat everybody.
You've got to fight. Yeah, to be the champion, you've got to beat everyone.
It seems like Colby is getting a bit of the McGregor treatment. Everyone knows how popular Colby is, for better or worse, whether you're against him or you're for him. He is a popular, interesting character that is always going to generate views, headlines. People want to watch Colby fight. People want to watch him win. People want to watch him lose. Of course, he's going to be thrown in there because the reality of it is, if we do look at the UFC welterweight rankings, who is there that you can put in against Leon that is going to generate that amount of
That's
views?
also a really good point. You got a brand new champion in Leon Edwards, while Colby is still a star. Like he could fight someone else and then lose, or you put him in against your champion. You're guaranteed a big show with a big build-up with tons of eyes on your new champion.
It makes complete sense. He's there to bolster Leon's star power. It's like, get the former guy in there who's gonna pull Leon out of his shell, talk some shit, have a good fight, and then hopefully you get this brand new champion who's defended his belt twice now, and he's stopping everyone of the old guard.
That was always the narrative. If Usman was never in that division, Colby would be champion.
Well, he weighed in at London at 265.
Oh,
He weighed in
true.
for the backup. If he's going to commit to a backup fight, he's obviously serious about fighting Leon.
If you're the UFC, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
What do you think when we look back on the Usman run?
He had the perfect mix of dominant champion who finishes people, exciting fights when he was a champion, but didn't stick around for too long. And we finally get the changing of the guard where it's like, okay, no, this is the new champion now.
I always remember when Tyron Woodley was champion thinking, and everyone talking about how big and muscly he was for the division, and how, like, even Dana at one point was like, he's got too much muscle. And then when he squared off with Usman, and Usman was like twice the size of him, and you were like, how the fuck? Holy shit, it was like the new welterweight. So that's how I remember, like, the first introduction to Usman and then taking the title. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the Usman era. The three African kings, that was a good time. Coming out of the pandemic as well, he felt like a guy that was ready to show up and put on good fights and entertain.
I do feel like we took him a little bit for granted, but I'm glad he has that legacy, and I'm excited for the next period of the welterweight division now.
Second best welterweight of all time.
Oh,
Definitely.
yeah, definitely.
Not on Mount Rushmore of MMA though.
Mount Rushmore of the welterweight division, absolutely.
Yes. Who have you got there? GSP, Matt Hughes, Usman, and Tyron Woodley? Tyron has the next best record.
Robbie Lawler.
Maybe Robbie
Potentially.
Robbie Lawler was unkillable,
Lawler.
dude.
Yeah, maybe Robbie Lawler.
Robbie
Nick
Lawler.
Diaz.
Maybe Nick Diaz.
Maybe he
yeah.
would just put Nick Diaz on there.
Yeah, maybe he would.
Strike Force,
Yeah.
Elite XC.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude, what's in there? What is it? Oh, one for me. Thank you. Look at that, man.
Yeah,
Here we go.
secondary.
All right. It's good that because UFC's on this weekend and I need, more Howler Head.
Well, there you go. Big shout out to
Howler Head.
our friends at Howler Head for sorting us out with brand new bottles.
Here we go. Love it, mate.
If you too want to get your hands on some beautiful Howler Head, you can go to Master of Malt, Amazon, and of course you can pick it up at your larger Tesco's.
So we shout out to our channel members
Yes,
as well,
sir.
guys. Yeah, if you didn't know, there's an MMA On Point family, which you can be a part of. If you click the join button down below, tons of benefits, badges, emotes in the live streams, in the live chats, but also mainly access to this fully unedited podcast, 2 episodes a week, access to the writers meeting, and also just supporting us.